Hello and Assalamu alaikum. My name is Sindhu Salman. I am from ML Linguistics Department of Karachi University. Today, the topic that we are going to cover is conditional sentences. In this class, we are going to review the topic to refresh your memory about the different types of conditionals. Also, we are going to have a look on why and how these conditionals and confuse the ELL learners. Similarly, at the end, a few ideas and pointers will be shared for the teachers to help them in teaching this topic. Also, a point to be noted is that some of the examples in this presentation are going to be adhering to culturally relevant pedagogy and critical pedagogy. Here is the list of things that we are going to cover in this topic. Now, first thing first, what are conditional sentences? Conditional sentences are statements discussing known factors or hypothetical situations and their consequences. When we use conditional, we are usually talking about what actually happens or what could happen, like we are imagining a different future, or what we wish could happen, like we're imagining something different from our present situation, or what might have happened. And this we're imagining a past to be different from the past that already has occurred. So, in this conditional sentences, we use two clauses. In this one of the clause is going to start with the conjunction if. The if clause states a condition, and the main clause states the result. Here, what must happen in order for the result to happen is that the condition must be fulfilled. For example, here are some examples given you to make better understand the conditional clauses. Number first sentence is mentioned, if I were you, I wouldn't buy that car. Secondly, if the weather had been good, we would have gone to the park. Here, the both conditional sentences are starting with the if conjunction. So, secondly, however, it is possible to reverse the order of the clauses of a conditional sentence without changing its meaning. What I mean by that is you can swap the places of result and condition and still the meaning will remain the same. Here, I wouldn't buy that car if I were you. Or we would have gone to the water park if the weather had been good. Here, in the even just by swapping the places, the meaning is still the same. However, we must note that a comma should be used after an introductory if clause. If we are mentioning the conditional clause first, we are going to put a comma after the conditional clause and then state the result. But if we are putting the result first and then the conditional clause, so there is no need for us to put a comma after the result clause. Now, moving on to the types of conditionals. There are four different types of conditional sentences in English. Each sentence expresses a different degree of probability that a situation will occur or would have occurred under certain circumstances. Well, the first conditional that we are going to discuss is zero conditional sentences. Zero conditional sentences express general truths, situations in which one thing always causes the another. So when you're using a zero conditional sentence, you're talking about a general truth rather than a specific instance or something. Zero conditionals are also called factual conditionals, in which we talk about habits, facts, and truths that could be of the past or of the present. In these sentences, we are not talking about the possibility, but we are sure and certain that if something happens, then this is going to be the result. Also in zero conditionals, we can substitute when or whenever for if and not change the meaning of the sentence. The formation is as follows. In the conditional sentence, we are going to use if and then use the simple present tense. And in the result clause, we are going to use simple present tense. Similarly, the same thing will happen. We will use simple past tense in the conditional sentence, and in the result clause, we are going to use simple past tense. Here are the examples of zero conditional sentences. If the plants do not get enough water, they do not grow. This is a fact. This is something that is not going to change. We know for a fact that if plants are not watered, they will not grow. Also, keep this in mind that we use simple present tense, negative form of simple present tense in both of these clauses. Similarly, when it rained in Karachi, the sewerage water got mixed with the rainwater, causing urban flooding. So this is something that happened in the past and it's actually a fact about the past time. In both of these sentences, rained and got are the past tense. Similarly, if we want to stop global warming, we need to take the deforestation in account. Also, if you are in emotional distress, it can result in a nervous breakdown. Moving on to first conditional. Consider this example. If it's hot tomorrow, I will go to the beach for a swim. In this sentence, we are not talking about our present time or fact, but we are talking about whether something will happen in the future. So, the first conditional sentences are used to express situations in which the outcome is likely but not guaranteed to happen in the future. We're not sure that this is going to happen, but but there is a possibility of that happening. For the formation of first conditionals, we use if plus present simple present tense, if plus present progressive tense, that is if it is raining, if plus present perfect tense if it has rained, or if with present perfect progressive tense. In this we are always using present tense. It could be progressive, it could be perfect, or it could be perfect progressive tense. But in the result clause we are going to use future tense. Example, simple future tense, that is I will stay home. Be going to, that is going to be present progressive. I am going to stay home, but it is referring to the future time. Another model, that is I might stay home. For you to get a clear understanding of first conditionals, here are some examples. You could relax before starting a new assignment if you finish your work earlier. Secondly, if the prices of petrol keeps rising, it will have drastic implications on the lives of the people from the lower classes. Here in both sentences, there is a possibility of something happening. The result that is going to happen, but it is a probability if the condition that is mentioned is met. If the weather is mild tomorrow, I will join the campaign for planting trees in the afternoon. For me to join the campaign, first of all, the condition that is going to be met is the weather should be mild tomorrow. Here, in all of these sentences, we are talking about the future. Moving on to our next conditional sentences, that is second conditional sentences. There are times when we imagine our present situation to be different. Like, we could imagine that if I were a billionaire, or if I were a millionaire, or if I were in your place, I wouldn't have done that. So, second conditional sentences are used when when we want to express something that is not true or will not likely happen in the future. That's something that is different from our present condition. For the formation of second conditionals, we use if plus simple past tense or if plus present progressive tense. For the result clause, we are going to use would plus verb. Could or might can be used as well. I would, could, might stay home. Keep in mind that if the if clause we use were, not was for all the person with the verb to be. For example, if I were, if you were, if he were, if they were. Here are the examples of second conditionals. If I were you, I would work against growing nepotism in the workplace. Secondly, if I had a large sum of money, I would help empower acid attack victims in Pakistan. In these sentences, we are talking about something that is not actually happening in the present. We are not the person, or I am not the person, or I don't have the enough money to help the acid attack victims. But I would like to have so, and it is something that is not going to happen or has a less chance of probability happening in the future. Thirdly, if I were a doctor, I would serve the needy free of charge. Fourth, I would stand on my head if the women all over the world were given their equal rights. Here, again, there in the first three sentences, the if clause is mentioned before, and in the fourth sentence, the if clause is mentioned after. So do remember this, that when we are using if clause first, then there is going to be a comma after the if clause, and then the result clause is mentioned. But if the result clause is mentioned first, then there is no need to put the comma after the result clause. Moving on to the third conditionals. Third conditional and second conditional might seem same to you. but they are vastly different. Why? Because in second conditionals we are talking about a present condition that we want to change or that we are imagining to be a different thing. But in the third conditional we are talking about a past that has already happened and we wish to change it, but it cannot change because as it is already happened. So in third conditional sentences, we express an action that did not happen. They are used to show how the situation would be different with a different past. We all have something that we regret doing in the past, or with something that we could have imagined happen in a different way, but that could not change. For the formation of third conditionals, in the conditional sentence, we are going to use past perfect tense and or past perfect progressive tense. And the result clause we are going to use would have plus past participle. Past participle are the third forms of the verb. Could have or might have can also be used as well. Here I would, could, might plus have stayed home. Here are some examples of third conditionals. If we had looked at the weather report, we would have stayed home. Here past has already happened, but we wish to change that. That if we had already watched the weather report, we could have stayed home. Second, if I had gone to university, I would have gotten a better job. Here, the I did not go to university, and that is something I regret doing. Number third, if we had gotten a steady supply of COVID vaccine earlier, we wouldn't have lost so many lives. Number four, many precious lives wouldn't have seen an earlier end due to bomb blasts if we had educated our students. Here, in all these examples, we are thinking about a different past, something that we wish could have happened, something that we regret, but it cannot be changed. Do keep in mind that we cannot change the past in the third conditionals. It's something that we wish to do, but we cannot. Now, moving on to the omission of if conjunction. There are times when we can remove the if and the meaning will remain the same. It will happen if we have were, had, or should after the if conjunction. For example, with if the sentence is as follows: if he were here, he would speak against the police brutality growing in the West. But by omitting the if, it will change into were he here, he would speak against the police brutality growing in the West. What we have done here is we have removed the if and we have changed the subject and verb position. We have changed the subject and verb position. So it has become were he. Similarly, if they had known about the fundraiser, they would have made a donation. Here we have omitted the if again and switched the places of had and they. So it has become had they known about the fundraiser, they would have made a donation. Thirdly, if you should find an electronic dictionary, please let me know. I've lost mine. What we have done is the same. By removing if, we have changed the places of subject and the model. Now moving on to our second last agenda, that is common ELL mistakes. These are some mistakes that confuse the ELL learners. So we are going to talk about them again. Number first one is don't use past tense to talk about past conditions. Instead use past perfect tense. The sentence would be incorrect if we said if he didn't cross the red light, he wouldn't have crashed with the oncoming school bus. However, we are talking about a past condition, but for that we have to use a past perfect tense. The correct sentence will be if he hadn't crossed the red light, he wouldn't have crashed with the oncoming school bus. This is the example of third conditionals because we have used the tense hadn't, progressive, present perfect, past perfect tense, and then later we have used would plus have. Secondly, don't use present tense to talk about present conditions. The sentence would be incorrect if we were to say, if she is a teacher, she would be great at it. The correct sentence would be if she were a teacher, she would be great at it. Now, in this sentence, we are imagining a different present condition, something that we would like to be, but it is sadly not possible at the moment. It is the example of second conditional sentences. Number third, when the verb to be is used in unreal conditions for actions in the present or future, we use were instead of was for the person, whether singular or plural. Can you guess in which conditionals we talked about that? If you guess second conditionals, then it is correct. In the prior example, the same has happened. If she were a teacher. Similarly, the sentence would be incorrect if I were to say, if I was the president of the country, I wouldn't shy away from being called out on my wrongs. Here, the sentence would be correct if I were the president of the country, because we are talking about a different present condition that we would like to be, but sadly, again, is not possible. Another thing that confuses ELL learners are contracted forms. Contracted forms are shortened forms. If we combine two words like had or had not, it will become hadn't. Or will not's contracted form will be won't. So, in this example, if I'd had more time last month, I'd have gone to more campaigns raising awareness about growing anxiety disorder among our youth. Here in the if clause, I had is used because I would is not used in the with the if, in the if clause, while in the result clause I would have is used. Lastly, the last thing that confuses the LL learners are the wish sentences. Remember that the verbs in the sentences with wish follow similar patterns to those for if. Wishing in the present time requires past tense, and wishing in the past time requires past perfect tense. These are the things that we learned earlier in the first two mistakes that ELL learners make. Incorrect sentences: who is that girl? I wish I know her. The correct sentence would be who is that girl? I wish I knew her. Because we are talking about the present tense, but it is a conditional sentence, so it will change into I knew. That is the past tense. Lastly, these are the ideas for teaching. As a teacher, you have to make sure the students understand the word if. To make sure they have a good grasp on the word if, you can explain it with good examples, taking help from the students to translate the sentences in their native language. Secondly, by judging the level of the class, you have the choice to teach the students conditionals in one class or simply teach them each type separately. It depends on the students. If you're teaching a primary level student, then it is better for you to teach them separately day by day. But if they are secondary level or intermediate level students, then you might uh, join them in one lecture. For EFL students, it is much better to cover one conditional at a time as they don't have much exposure to the language, and that way learners can take their time to understand and sort out the contrast in the forms and usage. One thing you can do is you can arrange a simple but interesting activities to engage the students. One way of doing that is to state a condition. Then the student will suggest a possible result, and then another student will reform the result into a condition, and the cycle will continue. Although in an adult learning institute, to explain third conditionals, an activity of this sort can be applied. First, the students are told to write down three things which they have done or not done in their lives which they regret, and three things they are glad they did. They are then told to imagine what it might have meant for them to if they had if these things had not occurred, and write down the sentences expressing what would have happened had the things been different. Afterwards, students share and discuss experiences in small groups. So now that we have reached the end of this video, hopefully this has been an informative session for you all. Any sort of feedback, good or bad, or something that you think I was lacking is welcome in the comment section. See you next time.